Good morning or good evening, depending on when you're watching this. This is my presentation for operations management with ride sharing and delivery platforms. Before I begin with this presentation, I'd like to go over what is operations management. Operations management is the practice of overseeing and optimizing the day-to-day functions of a business to maximize efficiency and profitability. It involves planning, organizing, managing production processes, as well as coordinating various departments to ensure that products and services are delivered effectively. I want to highlight and go deeper into the ride sharing and delivery platforms as the focus for today. So these are app-based and on-demand services, with the core problem being supply and demand are constantly changing. And finally, profitability depends on scale, efficiency, and pricing decisions. Before I go into my research questions and findings, I want to note that I've included in the description of this video a link to my source material, 6 different sources and summaries of those, so if you want to learn more about that, you can. Here are my questions. How do ride sharing and delivery platforms match supply with demand in real time? Because that's a big struggle they have. Second, what are the trade-offs between speed, cost, and service, and which companies lead out in these departments? Third, how does demand variability affect platform operations and performance? Fourth, what role do algorithms and dynamic pricing play in operations management? And finally, how do platforms manage capacity when drivers are independent contractors rather than employees? This first question, how do platforms match supply and demand in real time? The goal here is to minimize wait times and idle drivings. So that's between the customer and the driver. How they do this is through location data and algorithms. There's 3 main methods they use. First is first available dispatch. That just means that the first available driver goes with the first request. Batch making is the second one. I'll show you in a graph later on. And dynamic matching in high demand areas. Let me skip forward to a graphic I have. So here's batching. The platform receives a few requests, and then in this small window, and then it assigns based on efficiency different drivers. And then here's dynamic matching. This one, it also waits a little bit and decides on the highest efficiency again, but this one can pull drivers out of their original areas into higher demand areas. So sometimes it looks counterintuitive, but it definitely saves both drivers and riders time. Moving on to my second question I had was what trade-offs exist between speed, cost, and services. So on one hand, faster service requires denser driver coverage. Lower prices often means longer wait times. So that could mean less drivers are available. So they must choose between these 3 things. Winners in these categories, Uber and DoorDash, win in speed, while Lyft and DoorDash excel in price. That being said, here's the difference between just a taxi versus UberX, where you can see that ride-sharing platforms really excel in speed over traditional methods. And here is efficiency and utilization of the drivers. So not wait time, but the driver, the rider waiting time. I apologize. So we can see both of these metrics are, whether they be capacity and wait time or wait time, they're both better than traditional methods. Thirdly, how demand variability affects operations. So there's lots of variability. There's spikes in rush hours, bad weather, events, and weekends. Higher demand increases wait time and prices, and platforms must respond in real time to stay reliable. This article, the source you see, Dynamics of Surge Pricing, it actually found that it really is the supply and the demand mostly that affects prices and surge pricing, rather than bad weather or events, for example. And here we're talking about algorithms and dynamic pricing. So surge pricing is where they change the prices of their services based on demand. And it's really interesting in this industry how quickly prices can change, and that's really important to keep up with to meet demand. And sometimes they can be as much as twice as much you're paying if there's no other drivers available. And finally, managing capacity with independent contractors. Drivers choose when and where to work. Platforms can't schedule labor directly. And capacity is managed really through surge pricing, incentives, and demand targeting. This source on rigging the gig economy actually talks a little bit about the drawbacks of that. So you can read again in the description is where you'll find the sources. Key takeaways. Operations management is the engine behind ride-sharing platforms. Algorithms and pricing replace traditional management controls. Demand variability makes flexibility essential, and efficiency and fairness remain ongoing challenges. Thank you. And this slide was made through Slides Go for the templating. And here is some of the research if you'd like to go through it some more. Again, linked in the description. Thank you so much for listening.